from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
This is a special episode that has so much to talk about that I could do it on my own, but it just wouldn't be fun. And because I got to talk to you about it every single week. We're diving deep into ANDOR Season 2, which a month after its release is still #1, and it is a show that proves that you don't need a Skywalker or a lightsaber to start a rebellion. Just look what I did to this galaxy with a couple of drums of oil and a few kyber crystals.
Our third on secret is always telling me to watch Lord of the Rings. Slater is always saying you gotta watch Lord of the Rings. Yes. So I just started watching Lord of the Rings after I finished streaming Andor.
The first two, right?
I watched the first two,
so did I, yeah.
And I'm just like, what?
It's a weird comparison because Lord of the Rings is like, I feel like that's a part of human history and literature, but so is Star Wars.
Yeah.
And this is so much better.
It's basically like, and...
Is it comparing apples to oranges?
I don't think it is, because I think they are the two original nerd franchises, and obviously Clerks 2 has that iconic debate where Randall is shitting on Lord of the Rings, and the Lord of the Rings nerds are all like, yeah, well, we won all the Oscars. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
I've watched fellow...
that debate. I just think about the Death Star debate from Clerks.
Oh, the Death Star debate is fantastic. That's a great debate.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin Smith even was like, they've asked, would I direct a Star Wars movie? No, I love them too much.
Oh, yeah.
I would never want to be near one.
Bruh, I mean, there are few movies ever made that are better than Empire.
You know, and we were talking yesterday about Batman Begins, and the whole time I kept thinking how The Dark Knight is The Empire Strikes Back of that saga, because... I've been watching Star Wars a lot to prepare for the next episode, and there's like 10 different versions. You got what? Oh, it's the motherfucking C-3PO. There's so many different versions of Star Wars, and nobody really cares, but nerds like me do. You got the original theatrical cut, which they just aired, I think, at some film festival overseas, and Kathleen Kennedy had to come out herself and say, this is actually the original cut, because nobody's seen it since the 70s. You have that cut. Allegedly, people said it looked like shit. It was terrible, which makes sense. It's a 40-year-old piece of film.
Right.
You have the VHS, which is what you and I probably grew up on.
Absolutely.
We also grew up on the DVDs. The DVD menus were cool as hell. Yeah. I just got the Blu-rays. In 2011, they did the special editions. You know the last edition ever made to Star Wars?
The last edition.
The last edition ever made before it got sold to Disney. You have no idea. I could tell you.
Was it Greedo?
Wow, you did have an idea.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, let's go.
So, do you know what it was?
Is Greedo shooting first?
No, close. That's a good guess. It was, he...
Oh, I know what it is.
McClunky.
It's, no, I was going to guess that when Han sees Jabba in A New Hope, Greedo was there.
That's in every version of the movie. I don't understand why. I guess at first they were going to have like the Roidians be like a pack, but also Boba Fett isn't in the 77, but he's in the 97 release, which is interesting. But for some reason, we still don't have an answer why. The whole scene plays out where Greedo shoots first and Han does the CGI head move. And then for nobody knows what this means. The one part that's not subtitled is just Greedo going, McClunky, and then he shoots. That was all George. We have no idea what it means to this day. And I think that was just his way of being like, these were my movies. I could have done whatever I wanted to. And I think what Andor did so well is what Star Wars sort of failed to do upon its launch, which was when Force Awakens came out. They said, okay, we're going to appeal to the adults who grew up in the 70s and only do original trilogy stuff. Like, forget the prequels. Everybody hated the prequels. Turned out not to be the case, because we grew up during the prequels, and we grew up during LucasArts. We grew up during Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, the best movies to see as kids. And now we're adults spending money, and the people who grew up with the original trilogy aren't going to get into it as much as we are, because they have families. So they went back and they did a lot of the prequel stuff with gaming. You had Fallen Order, which was a story about a Jedi Padawan who survived 66 Then he had to like kind of live in the underground. His name was Cal Kestis. You had the Battlefront games, which were like Call of Duty, but for Star Wars, and there's a big push for there to be Battlefront 3. We got to get on that sometime. That'd be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And then the sequels didn't work with audiences, and you can't even blame it on them not having a comprehensive vision, because George Lucas did not have a full vision of the original 3. I'm pretty sure he decided in the last 5 minutes of writing Empire Strikes Back, Luke and Leia were brother and sister, because they tongued at the beginning, and then for some reason he's able to force time her out of nowhere, and she just has it. And also she senses Darth Vader when they're on the platform. Anyway.
I think with the sequels, and this is just like, I think the sequel, the first one came out 2015, right?
December 2015.
So at that point, JJ had a huge track record of just starting something great and then just fucking it all up.
J.J. Abrams doesn't know how to end it.
He has no idea how to end it, and I know people are going to be like, well, Lost was really Lindelof. He still created Lost.
Well, it's not like Lost had the best ending.
And that's what I'm saying. The ending of Lost was terrible.
Yeah.
The ending of Alias was terrible.
He's a visionary without he's a Spielberg without the Spielberg.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Totally.
Like, by the time Spielberg was his age, Spielberg had done E.T. and Close Encounters. Of the First Kind.
Was that him?
Spielberg? I might be fucking.
He did before E.T. though. He did Jaws.
Like my point. J.J. Abrams has, not to take away from J.J. Abrams and what Bad Robot's done. I think his production company is awesome, but like he has lived his career with the excuse of, if it's not great, he's our Spielberg.
Right.
He's not. There was a Spielberg, and it exists, and for the same reason there was a George Lucas. They were best buds for a reason. And I think what the sequels did was they copied the formulas of how the first ones were made. They hired unknown actors. They had an original, you have your maybe will they or won't they.
Yeah.
And then you have your mentor figure that is going to die off. What was going to piss a lot of people off is Obi-Wan in this movie being Han Solo. That was going to piss everyone off. But if you were like me and you read the script online a year earlier, you knew that shit was going to happen. They also needed a way to make Kylo Ren like a legitimate villain. But what the sequels didn't do is there's no heart.
Yeah.
The whole Rey Palpatine thing always bothered me because Luke told her, Leia didn't care that you're a Palpatine. So why would she change her name to Skywalker? Some argue because Ben Solo, who's again, last name is Solo. She took the name of Skywalker on to honor Ben Solo. And what else did she do? Last thing I'll say about the sequels. Yeah. The Skywalkers hate sand, and that's where she buried their lightsabers. Moving on to more pressing business. Then they come around to doing the Clone Wars show. We got a season 7 of that. They did the Bad Batch. And
we also got the best Clone Wars show in the early 2000s.
Yes. And Rebels, we got that too. People were really getting into the mythology of Star Wars.
Right.
And Star Wars was always George Lucas's way of not being able to do Flash Gordon. And then realizing when he was in film school, when he was in Vietnam, I think he worked for Life magazine, just realizing, imagine being that age, college student, going through Vietnam, taking pictures of this, and then going back to Modesto, California. It's obviously going to bleed into your art, and that's what the first 3 movies were about, and that's what Andor is about. It does not. The first 3 movies, you can argue, yes, it does shy away from making the on-the-nose commentary that Andor does, but Andor works so well because it's not what's happening. It's life.
Right.
It's history.
I think it reminds me a lot of a Tarantino quote I told you about, which is they asked him why The Godfather is the best movie ever made. And he goes, because it doesn't need to be about the mob. He goes, the characters are so strong. He goes, they don't have to be mobsters. They could work at a dry cleaning business and you would be still that
Enzo
engrossed.
Works at a bakery.
Enzo the baker, because the characters are so well written. This is the same thing with Andor. It doesn't have to be taking place in the Star Wars universe. This could easily have
just be a Firefly drama.
It could have been Firefly. why it could have been any. It could have been a historical drama. Like it could have been anything.
It could have been a season of Star Trek, to be honest.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Engage.
It was. I mean, it had a lot of Next Generation themes, which made me think Star Trek. But I think the big question everyone has when a Star Wars project is popular is, can I watch this if I'm not a big fan? And this is like the quintessential yes.
Yeah.
Because it will make you watch Rogue One. Then you'll probably watch 4, and you're going to watch 5, and then you're probably going to stop after 6. Because most people don't like Return of the Jedi. I love it. But when you read the script, I was kind of high on the plane the other day reading it, and I was like, yo, how did this movie get made? I'm on page 27, and there's still puppets.
I am your father. That's impossible.
Hey, Wanawanga.
And Princess Leia is your sister. That's improbable. And the Empire will be destroyed by Ewoks.
That's ridiculous. That is why your sister has remained safely anonymous. Leia, until now. God damn it.
And the Force, that's just little things called midichlorians.
Look, man, if you're going to take this seriously, I'm going to get out of here. That's Mark Hamill.
That is Mark Hamill.
And it's, I'm pretty sure 99% Donald Glover is Darth Vader.
Awesome.
So, season 1, I'll be honest. I thought it was great. I think a lot of people overhyped it. But it was different, which was what most of the talk was, right? Like, I remember I was talking about Andor, and we talk a lot about comics, but we never really talk about Star Wars. I'm obviously a huge Star Wars nerd. You are the most media literate person I know. There was something about season 1 where you're watching. Then you get to Narcana 5, and you're, this is why this show's so special. But something just had you. And I guess it was a Rogue One hangover in many ways.
Yeah, and I honestly thought the 2 seasons were very similar in the sense that the first season took a little, the second season took a little bit to get going too. I kind of thought that about the first season because when they announced Andor, I loved Rogue One, but I was like, you're making a show about, in my opinion, the least interesting character in Rogue One.
I wanted a Jyn Erso show.
Of course, I wanted
Sheridan Way. I think this show proves, like the Penguin, you could do that for all of them.
Absolutely.
Why not? It's a whole universe of people out there.
I just think they couldn't afford Donnie Yen for an entire show.
All is as Donnie Well bank account yields it.
You know what's crazy is, I mean, I'm sure you know this.
Put on my director
no worries. They offered that role to Jet Li first, and he asked for
in Rogue One,
and he asked for double what Donnie Yen asked, and I was like, bruh, Star Wars made the right call because Donnie Yen, I think, is a far superior martial artist to Jet Li.
Well, I mean, you know more about it than I do, but also, like, Star Wars is like, it's like Wes Anderson projects. People take pay cuts to be in those.
Yeah.
Everybody. I remember Diego Luna was doing press for Andor, and he was like, for Rogue One, and he was like, it's so crazy to be in a thing everybody wants to see. And you become a part of the zeitgeist. And I mean, I guess Jet Li doesn't really need that, but it works so much better with Donnie Yen.
And honestly, it did great things for Donnie Yen's career. Yeah. Like, I mean, Donnie Yen was already a huge star in Hong Kong. He had the Ip Man series, but it was like, holy shit, he's in, like, the biggest Star Wars movie. Now he's an Ip Man. Like,
yeah, and not just to pander to
John
Chinese markets. Or the other guy, Baze Malbus, who I think they taught him 2 weeks of English, and then they said, get on set.
I don't even know what that guy brought.
He brought a big gun.
A giant gun.
And he protects a blind guy. He was his caretaker that got sanctioned by the Empire. Now we will implement Medicaid. So season, I would agree with you. It started slow and then picks up fast. Although I loved the first season, first episode of season 2. With the TIE fighter.
Oh, that was great.
That's actually the last scene Diego Luna shot.
Really?
For the show.
Wow.
Which I thought was really cool.
And
Wow. And he said that the TIE fighter suit was one of the coolest things he's ever worn, and the most uncomfortable thing he's ever had on his body is in his entire life.
After his banana hammock.
After his banana hammock and after Bix.
Gael Garcia Barnell's banana hammock that he wears.
Listen, the Empire has a don't ask, don't Tarkin policy. Don't Tarkin about it. The cool thing for me, being a nerd, is seeing that TIE fighter, because the TIE Avenger was in a video game in 1996, and I just, you know what it's like when the creators make you feel like they know who the fans are?
Of course, yeah.
That's how I felt then. I was like, oh, this is so cool.
It's like how I felt in the Spider-Man show when Tombstone popped up.
Yes, yeah, that's how I felt seeing this Avenger. I loved how they handled the nervousness of that Imperial who was giving him the code cylinder to break into it. She people said that they had a hard time believing that Cassian would have shot that guy in Rogue One after seeing Andor. No, Cassian would have still done it.
I expect him to shoot him in Rogue One after seeing Andor because this is guy learned from Luthen.
Yeah, and also Luke was really lucky everybody who stole the Death Star plans died, because if they found out that he sank that bucket on a trick shot, they would have killed him themselves.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Motherfucker. Your dad is the reason we're in this position in the first place.
You turned off your targeting?
Computer, what's wrong? Nothing. I grew up on a farm. I got this.
An old wizard told me to close my eyes.
I love Wedge in that movie. I got hit. I gotta go. Bye. See you later. And you know Wedge, who he's related to?
Who?
That's Ewan McGregor's uncle.
That's the guy who's Ewan. I knew Ewan McGregor's uncle was in Star Wars.
He's Wedge Antilles.
He told him not to do it too.
Yeah. And
Dumb call.
He would make fun of him all the time. They'd be like, "That's Uncle Dennis at the movies. Dennis Lawson." And then episode 2 is sets up Mothma's wedding, where she's basically giving up her daughter, right? Mm-hmm. And God, is there a worse character in this show than the husband?
It's interesting that you say that.
Because you liked him.
I didn't like him before episode 3, but then he gives that speech in episode 3. Every time I'd watch him, I'd be like, okay, this guy sucks. He's just like a typical hedonist. And he's just that archetype of a character.
Yeah.
And then he gives a speech, and you could see that Mon Mothma's kind of surprised when he's giving it, all about finding joy in life.
Yeah.
And just like saying,
you're going to be dealing with so much suffering.
You're always going to be dealing with suffering no matter what. He goes, so it's on you to go out of your way and find the things that you can enjoy, whether it's a song, whether it's a nice meal. And I'm like, that can really just, and I think Gilroy said.
That makes him a great character.
Yeah.
What did Gilroy say?
Gilroy said that can be applied to today's time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even the most, I wouldn't classify that guy as evil, but people pretty much want the same thing.
Yeah, I think he's just a guy. I think that's the thing. It's not so much that he's
in the system.
It's that Mon Mothma is amazing, and he just can't measure up to her.
You nailed it on the head. There's Mon Mothmas, and there are Mon Mothma's husbands.
Exactly. He's just average.
He's an average guy who is okay. It's that line in Rogue One. You okay with seeing the Imperial flag rain? There's no such a problem if you don't look up. He's not looking up.
Yeah.
Mothma served in the Senate her entire life. She served with Padme. The deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith is them starting the rebellion. And the best scene to see just where she was that dance scene.
Yeah.
That dance scene is one of my favorite scenes of Star Wars, and it got eaten up a lot. I listen to that song every day. It expresses
it's a banger.
Everything what she's going through.
Yeah.
She's saying goodbye. I think we talked about this. She's saying goodbye to her old life. She is realizing she just gave away her daughter and she'll never be around her family again. Her friend just died. Her other friend is about to die.
Right.
And this is it. This is crunch time. Everything they've done is happening now.
Wait, who's the first friend? The guy with the gray hair. He's the one who's about to die.
Yes.
Who's the first friend that died, though?
The childhood friend that he was talking about with the husband.
Right.
So she's just going through it, and it's all, and that was her last day on set too. And I think it was
an incredible scene.
It was I remember not breathing when it was over. Wow. The last time I felt that was when the ship went through all the other ships in The Last Jedi. That was cool to see in theaters. That was the one cool part of that movie.
And that's another testament to her husband, because everyone's seeing her. They're like, "Oh, Mon Mothma, she's having a good time." He notices that something's off.
That bit, he always had a drink in his hand too. I loved it. Even at the end. The Aldhani heist. I don't really remember too much of it. It's kind of like the filler beginning of it. But we see... also, the farmer who died that they named the baby after.
Right.
That was... that whole sequence, I mean, they literally had to spell it out for the people who aren't literate enough to understand. With the SA scene, the Empire will take whatever it wants at all times. That's what that scene was.
Oh, I mean, those two scenes were such a gut punch. Like her,
I couldn't believe it.
And the guy on the motorcade, and you're like, and he's being shot at, and normally you'd think, okay, he's gonna get away. He's a protagonist. And it's just that's not how life is.
And they got sold out, right? The dude who was going to say, we'll protect you, he was the one that...
Oh, I thought he didn't sell them out. I was under the assumption that they made it there when he was like, you sold me out.
To protect him.
That was to save him, yeah.
That could be it, too. Yeah. Cassian coming in. Oh, another big thing, another big mention. This, for a huge deal for me, was at the end of that Vietnam episode between Cassian and the two rebel cells when you pull out and it's Yavin.
Yeah.
It's Yavin 4. That was so cool.
That was cool.
That was Jingle.
But that was also my least favorite part of the series up until then. Those two clowns just like going back and forth.
Pulling a ship 50 centimeters every 6 hours. And Cassian is kind of having the time of his life while it's happening.
Exactly.
Because he knows he's going to get out.
Yeah.
He knows immediately he's going to outsmate everybody.
It's like Batman in that Justice League episode when he's captured by the Injustice Gang.
Yeah. I think he just knew that he was more pissed that his friend had died.
Yeah.
That was there to meet him. And it was so cool to see Yavin in its infancy because we only ever see it as the rebel base. And I love when Star Wars explores its planets because, it can't be safe to live everywhere in Star Wars. No. And I love that they didn't show the aliens either in a medium that they show you quite frequently what these things look like.
Yeah.
We didn't see it. We just saw people's reaction. We saw a boot in a pant leg. We saw a woman throw up because of it, and then Cassian made the run for the TIE pilot and that takeoff.
Very Spielberg-esque.
Perfect. Yes, very Spielberg-esque. And the sets, they said, are like the ones in Rogue One, which were so massive. And you feel it watching the show. Most of Coruscant is like in real places.
Yes.
In real shooting locations, which I think is amazing for a planet that was entirely made out of CGI, and that's sort of what the prequels were blue screen shamed for. This was able to be like, here's how we set in the real world in the digital age. But that's a testament to George Lucas because movies and visuals weren't made like that at that time, so it kind of had, not to call it slop, but it was the first slop of its kind for it to become now.
Right.
Bix had my... Pick a lane. I don't really care about you character arc, and that's gonna get me in a lot of trouble for saying.
Yeah.
She went through a lot, and I'm not saying that. I guess I'm mad at her for what she did to Cassian, because he would have taken more of a responsibility, and if he knew Bix felt that way about him and the rebellion, he would have stepped up.
It's pretty shitty what she did, honestly.
Very shitty.
It's basically saying, like, you're never going to get to know your son because you're going to have to die on a planet with some woman you know. And she obviously didn't know the ending of Rogue One was going to end like that, but she knew the path he was on.
Yes. And, I mean, we were sitting there watching the episode with the messenger. You know, he's the guy who sends the messages, to plan the Radis, and they get the plans to the Death Star.
Take it!
Rachel! Can
I ask you a quick Rogue One question?
Please.
So the scene where he's giving the plan, like, the door is stuck. Is the door stuck, or is Vader holding the door?
No, it's stuck.
Oh, stuck. Okay.
Because the power went out.
Got it.
Vader cut the power out. And also, Vader cut the power out in his suit. That's how dramatic Anakin is. Because you notice his suit has lights on it. It's red and green and whatever.
You don't see it.
He didn't want to be seen.
Wow.
He's so dramatic, he had to turn that shit off.
Oh,
and that's why I
wow.
love Annie, man. It's so great. And also in Rogue One, I'm glad that they didn't include Palpatine or Vader in this show, because every time there's somebody on Twitter that was like, it's hilarious to me when they say, oh, we'll just talk about this in the next meeting with Palpatine, as if the meetings with Palpatine don't end in power! And Palpatine, he doesn't give a fuck about the Empire.
No, he's a
cares
wizard.
about one thing, and that's living forever. In the Empire. He's a what?
His power.
What's the forever?
Hi.
I think
Two Sith Lords.
two Sith Lords fall into the role of two.
Have I told
One
you the
comes
story
out
of Darth Plagueis?
Darth Plagueis the Wise. He was so powerful, so wise. He could influence the midichlorians, the great life. This guy, Darth Plagueis, he taught his apprentice everything he knows.
Annie, I'm the only one that can save her.
If we work to cheat death, Anakin, let's be honest, it's a power only one has ever achieved.
The Jedi have failed.
I see through the lies of the Jedi.
No, you have failed.
You underestimate my power.
My power.
We didn't need to see Vader in this. We honestly didn't need to see Vader in Rogue One, but the fans did. We didn't need to see Vader or Palpatine, and I honestly think it makes them scarier. And also, you have to understand the position of the two of these guys in the government at this point, and what the ISB is so cool, what's so interesting about them, because they literally are a shadow government who's running the show.
Right.
Vader is out.
They're like the KGB.
They are the KGB of the show, and Palpatine is trying to figure out how to have eternal life on Exegol. Vader is trying to figure out how to overthrow Palpatine. The ISB is the one in control here, and when Deidre Merrow is the woman who couldn't get her mole removed, when she's the one in charge of operations after playing Cyril for a year, and then their solution to that's when we get into the gore.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you also said about the lack of Vader and Palpatine, because I honestly think if Vader and Palpatine, and Tarkin for that matter, were in the show, it would have diminished the impact of Krennic as a character.
I agree. Yeah. That's why I argue that Tarkin had to be in Rogue One.
Right.
Because he directly stole the Death Star from him.
Well, because you needed to see that Krennic was really an upper middle manager. Like, he like as senior as Krennic was, he still had to report into Tarkin. Yes. He still had to report into Vader.
He had to curry favor to the Emperor.
Exactly. Whereas with the Krennic we see in Andor, he's the guy.
He is the guy because he's the one tasked with starting the project, right? And he's a sassy little bitch in Andor.
He's a sassy little bit.
Calcite substitutes, calcite extracts.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And we got my man, Imperial Officer Nick Cage, who looked into the Coleman people.
It's gorgeous.
I would love to see Nick Cage at the start with just as a stormtrooper. Waiting there only just use identification.
It's really hot in the suit.
Fuck, one wouldn't let me out. I saw the top.
I never had much parental guidance.
The one thing I didn't like about Bix's end was what I didn't like about Ramsay Bolton's death in Game of Thrones is it glorified the violence, and that's sort of the antithesis of what the show is about. Like, in Game of Thrones, it's because it outpaced the books, and George R.R. Martin would have never written Ramsay Bolton to be eaten by his dogs like that. And I didn't really like that. Did Bix's executioner deserve his comeuppance? Yeah. But and I also needed.
Wait, are you talking about the torturer that she blows up?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
They needed that to do for Cassian too, so he could say "fuck you" to Luthen.
Yeah,
because he was pissed about him doing what he did.
I felt that served the story more than Ramsay's Death and Thrones. I felt Ramsay's Death and Thrones really was for the audience because we'd been tortured by Joffrey for so long. We had to watch Robb Stark get killed. We had to watch Catelyn Stark get killed. Ned Stark get killed, and then finally Joffrey's gonna die, and he just chokes.
And it was nobody was really, from what I remember, happy when Joffrey died.
No,
kind of like
because
what we wanted,
and because they threw Tyrion in prison as a result.
Yeah, I mean, he only did a little time.
But like Ramsay, like it's just like okay, this was awesome.
Yeah,
and we got to see Jon Snow beat the shit out of him.
I mean, still the coolest part of the episode was him and the sword. That's the best Jon Snow with the sword when they're all coming.
It's in the end they're all coming in on him.
That's us anytime we have an opinion on Secret Identity. The Gorman Massacre is interesting because the Gorman goes back in Star Wars. This is nothing new. This goes back to like, I never knew too much about it because I wasn't much into the computer games. But there was a computer game that directly was this. Like a massacre happened on this planet.
So it was always in the lore.
It was always in the lore, and Tarkin always had something to do with it, which makes sense because Tarkin was never not known for being Goebbels type, essentially. And
he really is Goebbels.
He is Goebbels, and what's interesting is the Death Star began construction at the end of Revenge of the Sith. You see Tarkin, the Emperor, and Vader looking over it. So you ask yourself, well, why were they able to make the second Death Star so quickly? I don't know if you know this, and this is in a book that features a lot about Krennic and Galen Erso's relationship called Rogue One Catalyst. And from what I remember, the Geonosians, like in Attack of the Clones, Count Dooku had the plans to the Death Star. The Geonosians were helping them build the Death Star. Then the word got out that that's their building, so the Empire exterminated them all. 10 years into making the Death Star, so they had to restart it all over again.
Gotcha.
That's why when we see them now this is not fact, but it is fact, but this may not be why. That's why when we see them now, it's crunch time. We got to get this done. We got to get the goals
I always thought
out.
Galen was just sabotaging it.
Galen he wasn't with the Republic. He wasn't with the CIS. Catalyst opens with Orson saving him from this village who took him in with his wife and who took him and Lyra in, and then Orson comes in with the Republic to save him, and Galen's like, I'm not going to fight in the War Clinic. It's wrong. And
This is the Clone Wars?
This isn't during the Clone Wars, yeah. And then they were friends.
Yeah.
Some people infer they were lovers because someone's got to be gay in Star Wars all the time.
And put a woman in it.
Put a woman in it. Make it gay. Then that's why when we see him in Rogue One, Galen he was an engineer, and he ran away with his family when he realized what he was making, and that's why when we see him in Rogue One, we got to come back to work is stalled. That was some point after the Geonosia's extermination.
Yeah.
And then we just see, so we're assuming that we're designing the Death Star at this point without the Geonosians' help. And when we see Gorman, that's when we realize the material we need to build the Death Star.
Gotcha.
And we can't quite just show up with fleets of Star Destroyers and start taking it. And that was interesting to me because we never hear that from the Empire.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
No, I was just thinking that it's interesting because it's interesting what you're bringing up about Galen, because it almost kind of makes me feel that Galen is almost an interesting juxtaposition for Cyril, because you're saying Galen didn't know what he was doing. And then he found it out, and he obviously still kept working for the Empire. He had no choice, but he still sabotaged the Death Star.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Cyril, and we'll get to this, and Cyril is legitimately one of my favorite characters in the show. After
hated him, and then this season, he was the best.
Incredible character.
That Gorman Massacre episode was like one of the best.
And
that was incredible.
And Gilroy's even said he's the Javert of the show. He's the guy who sees it like as black and white, and like can't understand that Valjean is a complicated character the way Andor is. And
he literally gets it in that last second.
And that's the interesting thing is when he sees Cassian in that, he's realized that he's assisted with a genocide, Cyril, kind of like what Galen Erso's doing. But Galen Erso actually did something bad. He's like, all right, I did something really wrong, and I'm going to sabotage the Death Star. What does Cyril do in that situation? Does he save people that are being shot at? Does he do anything to like fight the soldiers? No, he goes after Cassian.
Because she was gonna shoot the girl who he just choked 10 minutes ago.
That's interesting because I always wondered, did he even care that he was gonna shoot?
You know what? Maybe he didn't.
I think he
kind of walked out on her.
I think his whole life
was a murder choke.
Yeah, I think his whole life was falling apart, and he's seeing this genocide around him. It's kind of like shit or get off the pot, and then he just sees the one guy who ruined his life.
Yeah.
And instead of doing the right thing, which is saving people that are getting shot at, he's like,
no,
fuck it.
On site with
exactly.
Andor, and that fight scene.
It was like a sign from God.
Yeah, and just the look on his face when he says, "Who are you?" And then the guy who being the one who takes him out is the one who Cassian said wasn't ready to lead the Gorman Rebellion yet, and that's what leads us to Episode 8 is very much what's happening in Los Angeles at the time of this recording right now, and I don't want to go too much into the politics of it, but Tony Gilroy himself said our show
was Cassian. We all saw it.
Let me see. First of all, you look at the Gormans. First of all, they do it with spiders. Spiders have 8 legs. General Grievous had 4 legs. Then he had 4 lightsabers. They had a whole collection. Good guy. You know, the thing about Palpatine, I knew Palpatine. He was a lightweight senator from Naboo. Naboo he was from, and then all of a sudden...
We should have killed Krennic when we had the chance.
We would have stopped the Trade Federation.
We need to stop them.
We need to stop the Death Star and reallocate those resources to Grand Admiral Thrawn immediately. We need more blue people in this galaxy.
My father was a blue person.
My father was blue, and we grew up in Blueklyn. That was bad. Don't give me credit for that.
I love that.
Mon Mothma. I want to sidebar Mon Mothma real quick because when I was a kid, there was a book called they would do anthology Star Wars comics back when like Dark Horse had it, and they would make some really cool stories. And there was this one called Star Wars Visionaries, and it was a kind of like a Spidey Blue, but like voice recording of a rebel soldier recording a message about what it's been like on Hoth 3 days leading up to the Battle of Hoth. And then in the book, we see his best buddy is the guy holding the mic. I don't know if you ever heard this in the movie, but it's Imperial troops have entered the base. Imperial troops. Yeah. So his best buddy gets shot right in front of him, and he's the one making the announcement and fires way out of this little thing. And the rebels get off Hoth, and Vader chokeholds one of the last soldiers on there, and he goes, "Tell me where they're going, and I might let you live." And then the soldier spits in Vader's eye, and then Vader kills him, and it was Mon Mothma's son.
Oh,
who
shit.
doesn't exist in the in canon, but in legend. And what's so great about it is she's listening to that recording right before her scene in Return of the Jedi. Wow. And that adds the word. Maybe one day we'll get an explanation for, like, Bothans used to be an alien, but Bothans, unless I'm proven otherwise directly, could be like what Cassian was. That's like a group. That's like an MI6. Like, you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information. We ain't seen a Bothan in these movies yet.
Right.
And
So you're saying like that's ripe for exploration?
yes. And I've loved Mon Mothma since I was a kid, reading that book since. And Genevieve O'Reilly coming back after.
Because she was cut, right?
She was cut. They cut that whole scene because it didn't really make a lot of sense. And in the script, Palpatine was trying to tell Anakin that Obi-Wan was trying to fuck Padme, and it really didn't make a lot of sense. And that's also when George was still planning on having Palpatine reveal to Anakin that he was his father.
Oh, okay.
And there was just a lot of stuff that didn't need to be there. And I would have loved to have seen the original ending for Padme, which was she showed up to Mustafar knowing Anakin was gone.
Okay.
So she showed up with a dagger and was going to stab him, and then he took it and stabbed her instead. That's instead of her dying as sad. And you know, like, and Palpatine siphoned the living force out of her, which I'll die on that hill. But like, it's still amazing to me that she and Princess Leia's mother were the ones that started the rebellion with Bail Organa. The three of them and a couple of Captain Panaka from the one black guy in Phantom Menace became a Grand Moff on Naboo. And then right before he died, he figured out who Darth Vader was, and then they leveled the Imperial Palace because he ended up being a total kiss-ass. Beside the point, that's what I do in this podcast sometimes. I go off on shit, and hopefully people like it. And you know what? If you love this beautiful man's voice, subscribe to Secret Identity too, and chances are you probably already do because we're amongst my people here.
And I do the same thing on Secret.
And you know what? Brent listens to Bonding, and that goes a long way for me. If he had a podcast called Brenting, I would listen to that too. I would listen to that every time I took my.
I'm going to quiz Tori on how many Secret episodes she's listened to.
I want Tori to be. She's never listened to Secret.
Nah, there's no chance.
I'm going to have her be in that scene, and it's going to be so hard to have her act because it's just going to. I even told her about. I pitched her the sketch, and she was like, "All right, I put my acting boots on." I was like, "Just shut the fuck up, man." My favorite episode of this season was Welcome to the Rebellion. I probably watched it more than anything else, and it's
That's the speech?
That's the speech, and that's one where it starts off with the senator from Gorman being taken out by stormtroopers at the Senate building, which is not supposed to be allowed to happen, which is eerie in itself to see it. It's literally the beginning.
That he wrote it before any of
before any of this,
and the fact that the fact that his name was Senator Brad Lander.
Dude, it was, I don't know how they got that. And then Maxine Water yielded her time to Mon Mothma. But I mean, like, even the massacre, dude, like the sending in the National Guard to take care of the local insurgents, like, that
was my favorite. The Welcome to the Rebellion was my second favorite, but the Gorman massacre was just like, it was like nothing I'd ever seen.
I don't think I've ever seen Star Wars done like that. Solo was grounded when Han was in the Empire, but what they did there, and those K2 robots are terrifying.
I don't know if I'd ever seen a genocide like that. I mean, the closest thing
like that.
The closest thing I could possibly think is like Saving Private Ryan at the beginning when they're on the train. But that's like but that's just a war.
They messed you up because they let you know everybody who died first.
Yes,
they were in the last like 3 episodes, and they died not ceremonious deaths. They were thrown across a coliseum.
Oh yeah,
and landed on concrete or like shot in the stomach. Yeah, no, congratulations, you're being rescued. Which I will say, my one bad prediction was I thought that initial shot vac droid Cassian had was going to be reprogrammed into the K2 unit because they sounded similar. But I guess that's who raised Cassian's kid. What stood out to you about the Gorman massacre? Let's talk about that for a second. I don't want to breeze over that because that's an important episode.
I think you kind of nailed it. I think it's because they put a face to these people. It's like it's kind of like when you go to the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum. They show you all the shoes that the Holocaust victims wore because it's saying, hey, these aren't stats, these are people. Like You're saying
the memorial's right in the center of
the
town.
memorial's right, exactly. And you're like you said with this, we've heard about the Gorman massacre for a while, and it's just when you say something's a massacre, it's like, okay, that's just like a word. But then when you actually see it happen, and you've gotten to know these people, and you know that they're innocent, and you know that
being in the environment.
Exactly.
I went to the first time I went to Tulsa, I went to the Monument of the Race Massacre.
Oh my God!
And it was hard. And
you know what? That's the closest thing. Watchmen did it.
Yes.
Watchmen did do that.
Well, I wouldn't have known about it if
Same.
it wasn't for the Watchmen. And the gruesome they show you the disregard the Empire has for the people it governs and how Palpatine's evil, water's wet. But Tarkin just backing his shit up on 500 people and splatting them. And Cassian learning the line that he passes on to Jin in Rogue One from one of the Gormans, rebellions are built on hope, which Tony Gilroy's son had to remind him to put that in the movie because he was like, Cassian needs to learn this so we can teach it to Jin. And it's under very similar circumstances.
Does he ever say that in Rogue One to her?
Yeah, where they're on Jeddah.
Okay.
And he's like, I hope so. And she's like, I hope. He's like, yeah, rebellions are built on hope.
God, it's been a bit since I've seen, right?
Yeah, it's Rogue. I love Rogue One, but Andor is in a whole other level for me.
Totally.
And Rogue One is it's weird to say this for Star Wars, but Rogue One is a war movie.
Yeah.
And the first, I think, like between 3 and 4 thing, even though we had Rebels going on, that showed us like what was happening. What was Rogue One existed to explain the plot hole of the exhaust port and Death Star.
Yeah.
That's really all.
It's interesting also because Rogue One I felt was like, they're like, wow, what a departure from Star Wars. But you still had Darth Vader.
Yes.
You still had like, I know Donnie Yen's not a Jedi, but like, I mean, come on.
Well, that's what Andor handled so well.
Yeah.
And Tony Gilroy said himself, he was like, there's billions of people in the galaxy, and the Jedi haven't existed for about 20 years. And even when they did exist, they weren't like, I mean, people knew they had these magical powers, but like 20 years without Jedi, 20 years with Imperial rule, might be 15 by this point. The Imperial rule is going to snuff out whatever idea of the Jedi there are to begin with. So it would make complete sense to me that nobody knows what the Force is. Why Cassian would be hesitant against Force healers, which I'd never heard of. I don't even know what those are.
I'm sure Luthen had no idea what the Force was.
One thing I love about Luthen, I wish we got more of, is he had such a hard-on for Palpatine, man. Yeah. He made himself look like Palpatine. The first terrorist attack he did was on Naboo, which is Palpatine's home planet. Yeah. That's later. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I really want to go into Mon Mothma's speech and why this episode is so important. Because a few years ago in a game called The Force Unleashed, they gave us the essential start to what the Rebel Alliance was, and Darth Vader had this apprentice who Starkiller, and Starkiller was tasked with bringing the Emperor's enemies together so then they could go after the Emperor. But Vader double-crossed them, and he rounded them all up. And then it was Bail Organa, it was Mon Mothma, a couple of other people, and Starkiller was the one that ended up coming to save them. And when he died, the explosion of him, the ash was like the rebel symbol. And that's how the rebellion started. A story that nobody really cared about, but it wouldn't really make sense in canon now. Makes sense for a video game, would make sense now. What I loved about how they handled it in this was there's 3 different... They're aligning... Rebels... The show Rebels is showing you how they're aligning the rebel cells. This is showing you who the figureheads of those rebel cells are. You have... Mon Mothma, who is financing and is sort of the, I would say she's the president, she's the chancellor, she's the HBIC of the rebellion, although she's not on the Battle of Hoth for some reason, and she's not there when they're going after the Death Star. She must have been napping. It was a long couple of weeks for her. She had like 5 9/11s happen.
That's true.
2 weeks. You have Luthen, who is the slicer, the spy, the not quite Saw Gerrera yet, but is willing to be there. And Cassian's somewhere between Mothma, Luthen, and Saw, and the third category being Saw, which Saw Gerrera is the Malcolm X.
He crazy.
He crazy, sure. But he's also by any means necessary, and also. this show pointed out what I knew for years. Saw be tweaking on Rimodium.
Yeah.
Saw is fucked up most of the time.
And Wilmer, too, whatever the...
Willman was fucked up, too. Willman ain't say no. Willman's like, pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side. You gonna kill that guy in front of me? Word, that's more
He really was an Imperial spy, right?
I don't know. It might have been. Saw was tweaking,
He was tweaking.
Mr. White. And the hardest I laughed watching that show was when Moth McClock Saw at the end of the show. She was like, we know you're on Jeddah, Saw. And he's like, you have no idea where I am. I was like, that's really funny. I loved that they knew that. Because they were trying to help him out. Saw's sister died during the Clone Wars, and that's what radicalized him so much. And he was neither here nor there. He was a blow everything up type of guy.
Right.
Your diplomacy is not working, because Saw also couldn't stand Bail Organa, the same reason why Luthen couldn't stand Bail Organa. And Luthen kind of had a reason to not to, because Luthen ended up being right when he said, hey, there's a member in this camp. Can't be trusted, trust me. But if I were Mon, I wouldn't have trusted Luthen at that point either. You know, like I wouldn't have really known who to trust. But what I thought was so important about Mon Mothma's speech was she finds the bugs in her office. She finds out that the guy that's been working with her for 3 years has also been working for Luthen, and Luthen tells her he's protected you in ways you had no idea. And Mon is saying she said goodbye to her life at this point.
Yeah.
She said it in the dance episode. Mon now has the way I see it, she has two tasks. She has to
Get some dick.
She got to get some dick first. Bail me out, Organa. She has to start the rebellion on TV.
Right.
And then she has to give a follow-up speech. Those are her two things that she's tasked with now, and the fate of the galaxy is dependent on it. The rebel cells uniting on Yavin depend on it. Everything they ever did for Yavin depended on this. And Bail Organa had to stay to protect Leia and his wife. And if he went to Yavin, it would have looked a little suspicious. It was much easier to sell a rogue senator going out against Palpatine like this. And her speech, which I'm gonna play at the end of the episode, because it's so poignant and it's so important. When she said that monster will come for us all, and that monster is Emperor Palpatine, that's how I knew it was science fiction, because there's not a single person in our government that would stand up like that in name and be willing to lose everything and walk out and be done and be a fugitive for the rest of it, at least in my opinion. And that's me getting a little political, but she was standing 10 toes on business there, and if she didn't do it, it would have never been done. My favorite line in this show, I have friends everywhere, Cassian saving her, the Imperial spy, the ISB spy who infiltrated Bail's group, and then what is this, Cassian or the other guy shooter, where he goes, it's a rebel spy, and they just cold-blooded.
Oh yeah, he says it's a rebel spy, and then Cassian shoots her, and I love that also, because I was like, wait, how did Bail's crew get infiltrated? Because they keep saying Lonnie's agent. I'm like, oh, I get Lonnie had to put an agent in there as the ISB person, but because it was Lonnie who did it, he told Luthen.
Yes, yeah, and oh shit, wow, you're right.
Right.
Whoa,
because if he didn't put the agent in there, they would have known that he was. So he's like, all right, I have to put someone in there. I have to screw with Bail Organa's group. Then I'm going to tell Luthen.
Luthen tight lips.
That's how Luthen knew that they'd been compromised.
Wow, dude. Maybe you got to sit in on all these episodes with me.
I just try to approach it the same way I do a comic book.
It's they're one and the same. The funniest part of that episode was when
Clovis,
we found her, and her face just the best. And when she's leaving Coruscant, and she's got Cassian's coat on, and she's sort of just, I love that she's holding on to the car because it's her, and she eventually lets go because that's her letting go of her old life, and she's going now into this planet that's this sanctuary that this was all supposed to be for. And then we get
Does the episode end with Alan Tudyk coming to life?
I thought we got that in 10, but that might have ended. That might have been in Welcome to the Rebellion.
Because he got he got K2 in.
He got K2 in the Gorman Massacre.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they bring him to Yavin 4.
Right, and then I think so because that's what I was thinking. I was thinking in episode 9 after all this, and he's trying to leave with Bix, and Bix obviously leaves. I think that's why he goes in when they're setting up K2, and he's just like, all right, my wife or girlfriend has left me. Let me just see what happens with the robot. And then that's why I think it ends with K2 waking up.
Yep. That's what I was just looking up, and that was exactly what happened. I was just happy to see K2, and K2 is so great.
He's
in this
awesome.
Show. He's just like,
he's so funny.
He has anxiety, and he hates that the humans. He hates humans can do human shit that droids can't. Everything's analytical with him. He's just so great. He's so great. He's so playful.
Having him play poker and like not understanding
that was my favorite scene.
So good.
That's what I'm talking about. It was like he's not gonna win because he can't do the human. He
can't bluff.
That line from Attack of the Clones. If droids could think, there'd be none of us here, would there? We finally get the Death Star intel because Lonnie was on Dedra's computer and he read it all. And I think Lonnie had to die.
Yeah. And because we talked about this before we started recording, he may be the biggest MVP in all of Star Wars. Because we talk
Lonnie?
about...
Yeah, tell me why.
Because we talk about Rogue One, and we talk about Jyn and Cassian and all this whole crew that had to get the plans over to Leia eventually when Luke gets them. But none of this ever happens if Lonnie wasn't just snooping around.
He was the whistleblower.
He was the whistleblower.
Yeah.
And he knew it was putting his life in jeopardy.
Yeah, I mean, and it literally did. And which was why it spoke a lot to Luthen's character that he let Lonnie die thinking that his wife and kid were going to be safe on Yavin.
Right
before he shot him. And
Luthen knew he was dying soon too.
Yeah, well, I think they said that in that season. He was like, they're gonna hang us both.
Yeah,
we knew that when we signed up. Death Star Intel episode. Then we get Clea. I gotta shout out Clea.
Ah, cool.
First acting role. Absolute killer. Her scene with Lonnie when they were at the museum thing and they're
that was her first acting role ever?
That was her first ever acting role.
Way to hit the ground running.
Killed it.
Oh, that scene with Lonnie with Krennic
with Krennic
so
right
good.
there, and they have to get the listening device out. Yeah, that's her first ever role, and I'll be honest, I thought they were going to pull like a Filoni move and it was going to be Leia, and Bail Organa sent her to go live with Luthen to keep her out of protection. I'm so glad she was her own character. Yeah. I think, here's my theory, if I were writing Star Wars, if I were Tony Gilroy, I would do 2 shows. One, I would do one about General Veers. General Veers is a guy in Empire Strikes Back who is also in Game of Thrones, the old dude, the horny, perverted dude who all the kids kill.
Pycelle?
Yeah.
Wow.
General Veers is the one who blows up the Hoth shield generator.
Oh, okay.
And he just disappeared from Imperial records after that battle. There's no story as to why. I would write a show about that, and I would write a show continuing Clea's story. And you can make in Empire Strikes Back, when Han comes back to get Leia from Echo Base, and she goes, "Why are you still here?" There's a woman operating a switchboard behind Leia. I would love so much for that to be Clea. And in Rise of Skywalker, there is a character that kisses another woman at the end of when they won.
Yeah.
I really hope it's what's her name from this show.
Val?
Yes.
Cool.
I really hope it's Val. Even though it has another character, you can retcon it.
If you do a Clea show, you could also put Wilfred or Wilmer or whatever the hell is that.
Willman,
put him in there.
Because what the hell happened to Willman?
What happened to him?
I was fully expecting him to die because I was
For sure.
Where the hell is this guy going? He just got to smoke a little bit of Rhymodium. We then, after...
Because I got high.
I was gonna help Saw, and then we got high. I was gonna steal that Kyber too, but I got high. Now Deidre showing up at my shop.
Man.
3 items I want to point out in Luthen's shop. 1, a Gungan skull. 2, Padme's headdress from Attack of the Clones, and 3, Plo Koon's eye goggles and mouth mask. Plo Koon is that Jedi who got shot in Order 66 in the Starfighter. Just want to point that out to my fellow nerds. We get... Luthen knows the second she walks in, he's dead.
Boy, is that a great acting scene, too.
It's one of the best.
Oh, my God.
I hope I have something special. Oh, my God, the best.
And she goes, you've lived here under the empire.
And security of the empire.
What a shame. I've known about you the whole time.
There's a
Hardly
whole
seems
galaxy
fair.
out there waiting to disgust you. The Empire's flown far from here. He knew when he took a bite of Clea, that was it. And the dagger and him knowing Clea was going to come and finish the job.
And her hubris did get in the way, too. Krennic was right. Like, she didn't have to confront him alone. She could have had soldiers in there.
Yes, yeah, and that threw me because she lied and said we have you surrounded. Yeah. Obviously, that was not true. And she kind of not saying that she deserved worse. A lot of people say she got way too harsh. Nah, Dedra deserved way worse than what she fucking got. I also thought that in Luthen's episode, his backstory, incredible. The one thing I'm kind of fuzzy on, I'm just going to assume he was fighting for the Empire. He wasn't wearing an Imperial uniform. Didn't look like a Separatist uniform. Looked like some Imperial shit, and that's where he saved Clea from. Right. And that's when he deserted, and then they became, am I your daughter? When it's useful. And he blows up he blows up Naboo. And it's actually, I'm pretty sure that's the bridge we see Padme's funeral on in Revenge of the Sith. And I just love their dynamic so much. And we get the greatest scene from K2SO when he goes to
legend.
He's going to save Clea, who through a distress call finally got a hold of them, and he shows up. And he's there. They go in, and then the Imperial Marines show up, and he goes, "That's not good."
Yeah.
And what is my man K2 always standing on business? Goes, all right, I guess there's only one solution. He's like a Crumbopulous Michael. Here I go killing again.
And you knew it was going to work out for them because Cassian and K2 and the other guy, Milshi, they all had plot armor. But still, Clea didn't. She could have died,
Yeah, and, Clea has a Mona Lisa moment at the end where you could see her crying a tear of joy because everything that happened was because of what her and Luthen did.
And when she's giving the names to Cassian, too.
Yes.
Galen Erso.
I'm yelling at the TV like a Matthew McConaughey at Interstellar when that's happening. I'm like, no, go!
And it fits so well with that Rogue One scene.
Oh, my...
When he's like, Galen Erso?
Galen Erso? How do you know Galen Erso? When was the last time you had contact with Saw Gerrera? It was just the barber on Yavin deserves to be shot because Cassian's hair looked great till they had to match it up with the Rogue One hair. But I mean, even his Varian Sky, he was kind of like a Lando Calrissian spy kind of character. I liked a lot of what he had going on. I also love that the end message of the show isn't "we did it." It's now it's begun. Just like the end of Rogue One sort of is. Now it's begun.
It's the famous Winston Churchill speech. And he goes, "This is not the end." He goes, "This is not even the
blacks living in this country." What was it?
It was during World War II. He goes, "This is not the end." He goes, "This is not even the beginning of the end. This is just the end of the beginning."
This is just the beginning.